2014 wasn't a very good time for the WWE video game series. Following the releases of Microsoft's Xbox One and Sony's PlayStation 4 consoles a year prior, WWE 2K15 entered the world following a series of announcements both early and recent that had the fans reasonably pessimistic and worried that 2K Games' first entry in the latest generation of gaming would be disappointing. Sadly, for almost everyone, the low expectations were proven valid, as WWE 2K15 came across as a beta version of what could have been the next enjoyable evolution in the franchise. Thankfully for the series, its creators turned out what should have been its 8th generation console debut with WWE 2K16. Everything from its gameplay to its mode offerings were more robust and satisfying than almost anything its predecessor offered, giving every WWE video game fan high hopes that the sequel would be even better. I was in the same boat as many other optimistic gamers, thinking WWE 2K17 would be one of, if not the best entries in the series. Sometimes it's hard to judge what complete means when reviewing a wrestling game. Usually the best criteria for completion in a WWE game came courtesy of 2K Showcase mode, where the player would take one or more characters and play through a historic era of wrestling, in last year's case the career of Stone Cold Steve Austin. For the first time in years, the primary talking point mode has been done away with, leaving My Career mode to pick up the slack. The standalone mode allows a player to create his or her own wrestler, males only unfortunately, and take that individual through the WWE title ranks in hopes of achieving the World Heavyweight Championship, or more importantly this time around, becoming a Paul Heyman guy. My time with this year's version of My Career extended far into the double digits before my character simply achieved WWE World Heavyweight Champion status. There are other things to keep a person busy, from online competition to creating your own WWE universe, but just like last year, nothing fulfills the completion quota better than My Career mode. Rather than abandon what worked last year, 2K17 sees an improvement on the somewhat overhauled gameplay that pushed the series further down the rabbit hole of simulation gaming similar to the N64 games. One of the most important features returning from last year's game when it comes to the gameplay is the utilization of a reversal bar. Separated by a varying number of blocks, with the segments depending on the grappler's stats that regenerate over time, reversals are now limited and forces the player to pick and choose when they should go for that well-timed counter, rather than turning every match into a reversal spam fest. The stamina meter returns too, but doesn't have the same limitations against the player as it felt the system did 2 games ago. There's also the rock, paper, scissors like collar and elbow tie-up sequence that can occur at the start of a match, but is now dependent on the wrestlers, as most matches will begin with a strike rather than a tie-up, unlike the previous editions. Taunts too have been overhauled to work into the action. Rather than taunting just being a way to boost the character's momentum and attain a finisher faster, the ability to pose to the crowd or in the direction of an opponent can either give a character a temporary momentum or damage buff. This buffing system also has a debuffing system connected to the reversals in another new implementation, the rollout system. In multi-person matches, there are moments where a character can take enough damage to the point that he or she has to roll out of the ring to recover. If the player or AI opts to utilize the early recovery to get up faster and re-enter the fray, the grappler will be weakened and vulnerable to being knocked out of the ring again. Unfortunately, the rollout system can be iffy at best, as there are times when a player will be forced out of the ring from anything, including the world's strongest slam, to simply being turned over onto one's back if the character's health is low enough. It's a good feature that adds a sense of drama during multi-man matches, but definitely needs some fine-tuning. There are 2 other additions from last year's entry making their returns, including the revamped submission system that copied UFC Undisputed 3's submission wheel. There's also a button-mashing version of the submission system that turns into something similar to the minigame used in the Royal Rumble matches, but with more tapping of specific buttons and a harder AI if one is playing against the computer. Both are functional, but still lack the fluidity and satisfaction of pulling off a slick submission. Then there's Breakout, where the player can attack an opponent during an entrance or after a match, only in Exhibition and Universe mode. Just like the last time, it's fun the first couple of times you do it, but gets pretty old and unnecessary fast if you want to have a straight up match. Several match types have been modified to provide a better playing experience as well, specifically ladder matches. For years, ladder matches have featured questionable retrievals of titles or briefcases by simply holding the right analog stick up or down. This year, ladder matches feature a mini-game where the intended winner needs to get a little ball inside a small open circle to chain together the unlocking mechanism. While it might not sound fun, it works exceptionally well and is a wonderful modification to a once problematic match type. Table matches have also been given the meter treatment, as a character must slam their opponent over and over again against a table while building up the table breaker meter before someone goes through the wood. Unlike the ladder match improvement, the table meter doesn't really work, as someone can go off the apron and through a table for a short victory with no meter needed. Fighting backstage and in the crowd returns for the first time in years, and is unfortunately underwhelming. In-crowd fighting is sectioned off to a pair of small aisles between the fans in one area in the corner of the arena. Backstage is a little more interesting thanks to a variety of finishing move options courtesy of lockers, oak tables, and even a circuit breaker box. Similar to the breakout and crowd fighting, taking the action backstage loses its luster quickly thanks to the lack of areas, unlike the old SmackDown games. Even with the obvious negatives and shortcomings, the gameplay is arguably the best in the franchise's history thanks to a mix of match improvements, smarter AI, and noticeable long-term necessary control changes. Creation enthusiasts are in for a treat yet again. The creation of a wrestler is helped by one of the most robust facial transformation systems ever, as well as the return of importing a picture of someone's face to place on a generic call to almost instantly put that person in the game. There are plenty of options in regards to clothing and hair, including the ability to stack shirts and pants, and even dyeing hair. The biggest unwanted change when it comes to creating a wrestler is the removal of body morphing. In its place are usually 5 or more stock options a player can choose from after picking the overall stock body type, similar to what is used in the Fire Pro Wrestling series. The other creator modes are getting better with each iteration of this generation, including the reformatting of creator entrance, show, arena, and championship, and the return of creator video, where the player can use highlighted clips from matches to create custom entrances and Titantron videos for the created wrestlers and WWE superstars alike. All this ties in perfectly with Universe Mode, where a player can create shows, rivalries, and loosely held together storylines. Players have the option of picking the amount of matches on a card now. Like the rest of the game, WWE Universe Mode can get glitchy, but it's still a lot of fun if you enjoy the pseudo General Manager mode. While Universe Mode isn't really any better or worse than last year's iteration, My Career Mode is a further example of how flawed the idea and execution is after 3 games. While last year promised an expansion of what was originally seen in 2K15, it proved to be nothing more than the same, just faster and a little cleaner, with an end goal of getting into the Hall of Fame by completing either one major goal or 3 minor sub-goals that included tasks such as winning every championship or going undefeated at WrestleMania at least 12 years in a row. This time around, the goal of a created wrestler isn't just winning titles, but also becoming a Paul Heyman guy, by completing the exact same qualifications of becoming a Hall of Famer last game. Being a client of Paul Heyman isn't worth its weight in promo gold, as Heyman, who gets a few character-specific cutscenes that range from him enlightening the player's character about changing up his moveset to what grappler he should feud with if he wants to get the character on Paul Heyman's good side, just becomes available for the character's manager, though no different from any other manager in the mode, and helps him form a tag team with Lesnar, with the latter easily dissolving if the player doesn't jump into the tag team title division soon after. Beyond the Heyman stuff are the meat and potatoes of My Career Mode, rivalries, and chasing championships. The prior is strictly attached to another new system in the game, the promo system, which is also available in Universe Mode. The player is given a chance to choose between 4 options and do promos that aren't voiced and are just a wall of text, as if this were the PlayStation 1 era. While the text-based promos aren't that much of a problem, the actual system proves to be poorly planned out, as the player is presented with short sentences that might read like a good response, but turn out to be awful both in wording and in flow, as promos rarely come together in a fluid manner. It may read like a face response initially, but is actually a heel statement, and can end abruptly if a character has the promo ability such as kicking someone in the groin to win the promo battle. Depending on the city, crowds supposedly respond differently to certain promos. Sadly, this turns into a gigantic guessing game as most promos will end without the revelation as to what type of crowd the character was playing to or abusing verbally after the fans chant inaudible phrases randomly throughout. When it comes to rivalries, promos usually initiate these extended encounters with the potential of promo duels and matches helping the winner rise up the ranks. Unfortunately, rivalries and the rankings themselves are flawed as well. Rivalries are based on rivalry points that change depending on who wins matches, promos, and randomly even if the two characters never interact. Winning the last match in a rivalry might not conclude with that character winning the overall rivalry if the points aren't in the loser's favor in the end. And then there's the ranking system that adds to the overall unnecessary grind that comes with playing My Career mode. With VC, the game's currency, being easier to attain due to it being a reward for every completed match both offline and on instead of having it attached solely to My Career like last year, it was decided that popularity and t-shirt sales, where the latter focusing on the player changing a character's entrance attire constantly, would be the basis of ranking changes. And not surprisingly, these factors in dictating how quickly a player is fighting for the gold is broken. For example, for almost a year my character only went up 2 spots in the Intercontinental Championship rankings after having great matches, winning promos and rivalries, and making boatloads of VC off of t-shirt sales. Even winning the Royal Rumble didn't automatically put my character in the world title match at WrestleMania, even though he wasn't involved in any type of rivalry. For the second year in a row, this must be stated in regards to My Career mode. There is a serious lack of immersion that makes up My Career mode that was also prevalent in last year's version and the year before that. It's really hard to figure out how they can fix this mode in its current form because as it stands now, there's nothing revolutionary about it from a long-term perspective. Online play is back as well as community creations where players can download wrestlers, logos, and even movesets. When it comes to the actual gameplay portion of WWE 2K17 Online, the game is pretty much just like its previous versions and to a certain extent worse, thanks to the laggy online play and glitches with the pinning system that can prevent a person from kicking out. Thanks to a glitch trophy, I spent more time with online than any other WWE game and still felt underwhelmed. The graphics fluctuate between excellent and what in the world is this thing, thanks to a mix of redone gameplay models and the new lighting system that really shines during entrances. But nothing brings this game down more than the glitches and errors that cause crashes. Never in my time with this series have I had a game crash or freeze as much as WWE 2K17. The graphical glitches are usually minor, but the freezing and crashes take the cake when compared to previous iterations. Moments like my character opting to become an official Paul Heyman guy only for the game to crash because the cutscene wouldn't work unless I was offline were just the tip of the iceberg, as problems such as random freezing during the creating of a wrestler, thus losing everything, and saves becoming corrupted if the game was running when the PS4 went into rest mode all hindered my early progress with 2K17. While the game is definitely an improvement from several aspects, the sheer level of disappointment when it comes to the promised improvements to My Career and Universe modes, functionality issues both online and offline, and odd changes to the creative wrestler system are off-putting and leave me less excited about 2K18 than I was about 2K17 after 2K16 entered my home. WWE 2K17 is one of those games that you really want to love, but the flaws are so obvious it's hard to give it a strong recommendation. The gameplay bell to bell is so much better than the games before, as are certain specialty matches. The roster is incredible, and so are the creative modes. But for every step forward there's a disappointing step back due to game crashing glitches, Universe mode being no different than the year before, online still being a mess, and My Career mode failing to live up to the lofty expectations set over the course of 2 games ago. Compared to WWE 2K15, 2K16 was a masterpiece. The same can't be said about WWE 2K17. Against 2K16, WWE 2K17 simply feels good enough to warrant a purchase when it's on sale. If you want a wrestling game for your 8th generation console, skip the last game or, As always, wanted to see Roman Reigns take a Stone Cold Stunner, Rock Bottom, or Bionic Elbow during a Fatal 4-Way match. But it doesn't need to be bought immediately, especially considering it's in need of further patching to potentially fix the most detrimental glitches that still exist after the first 4 updates. It's becoming more and more obvious that the game engine can no longer properly match the intentions and fresh ideas formulated 2 games ago, and is in need of serious help, more than a single year of development can provide.
There's nothing the authority can do about it. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Paul Heyman